For those joining, I have turned on recording and also closed captioning. If anyone objects to that, please tell me. And we usually start the meeting with a question and answer. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, I'm looking at the settings on the iPad for Zoom, and I don't see anything about anything other than the microphone. There's nothing to adjust for sound.
Okay.
At least not on my iPad.
Okay.
Whoop.
You're muted.
Okay. I have a question. How
Yes.
do you fuzz, or I don't know the proper term, the background
Everyone
on
seems
Zoom?
output volume. Let me try that. What was the question again?
I don't know if you say fuzz the background or make the background so it's not like you can see all your background.
Okay.
But somebody said that you can kind of make it so it isn't all
Yes.
all the background.
If you're on a desktop or laptop, go up to it says Zoom Workplace or Zoom, if you have an older version, settings, and then there's background and effects. And the second effect over is blur.
Okay, so
Tomorrow
where
in
do I
spring,
go?
You'll see showers and can expect a high of 53 degrees Fahrenheit and a
Go
low of
to-
44 degrees.
Go to the Zoom, go down to settings in the Zoom menu, go to background and effects, which is about halfway down, and the second setting over is blur. You click that and it blurs the background.
I just have SMUG on here, so I'm probably not hitting the right thing.
Are you in Zoom or are you using just a browser?
No, I hit the top and it says mute, you know, that with video, blah, blah. And then there's a zoom and a check. And then when I do that, it says SMUG 1900, the number, the passcode, the participants encrypted.
Okay.
Then I hit the people that are on there, and then we get more people.
Yeah. Well, above that in the main menu for the computer, there should be something, there should be a Zoom or a Zoom Workplace menu way up at the top next to the Apple menu. And under that is settings. And settings has something for backgrounds, and you can pick various backgrounds.
I'll check it.
I used to use the blurred.
I'll go on my computer and do it. I'm on my tablet.
On the tablet, I don't know how to do this on the tablet.
It's on the bottom. If it's a tablet, if it's an iPad, it's along the bottom. You have to tap up above the black area to get all of the icons to pop up. And then way over at the right before the leave red X, there are 3 dots. It says more. And that pops up something that says apps, meeting settings, backgrounds and effects, which is what you wanted. Backgrounds and effects.
And it says blur.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your heart.
Yes, you just blurred your background.
Okay.
I will tell you a disadvantage of a blurred background. I'll show you right this second. I'm holding up this orange hard drive. If I go and I blur my background, I go into settings and pick background blur, and I hold I need to find my mouse again. My mouse disappeared. And I hold this up, it kind of fades in and out of reality because it's focused on my face and it doesn't really see this if it's someplace, if it's not my face. So these things tend to disappear. And so it makes it difficult for me to demonstrate things because if I have the background, it blurs that stuff. So my background now is this canvas print of a Hokusai print, very famous Hokusai print. I'm very fond of Hokusai, but then again, I'm a Japanese historian, so that's, par for the course. Any other questions? Well, I will tell you a couple things while we're waiting for other people to come on and possibly have questions. First, Apple is having their Worldwide Developer Conference on June 10th through the 14th. You can participate virtually online. It's aimed at hardware and software developers, but they always have interesting things that you don't have to be a specialist to understand. And in the most important thing is that on the very first day, at 10 a.m., they have a keynote, and the keynote talks about their plans, their software plans for the most part for the rest of the year, and sometimes they cover hardware as well. But it's well worth seeing, and it's free. And they just announced today a special event that they're going to have at a ridiculous time. It's going to be at 7 a.m. on the 7th of May. They're having a special event, and the graphic for it suggests that it's going to be have something to do with the iPad. But these things are free, and you can just log into the Apple site and watch them. If you have an Apple TV, you can use your Apple TV to watch them, which is what we do at home. And there have also been some updates to various Apple operating systems for iPads, laptops, desktops, iPhones, whatnot, since our last meeting. Mostly security updates, but one thing that everybody could use is they've added some more emoji, which I always find a fun thing to play with. I like to send my daughter cryptic messages written entirely in emoji. She lives in England, so sometimes it's a mixture of US and British humor, and she sits there and puzzles them out and then says, "Oh, Dad," which is appropriate. Any questions anyone has?
Do you have any experience with Backblaze online backup service?
I use it. I've used it since before we moved out here. When we moved out here in 2018, I have a huge amount of data, photographs and whatnot. And while I shipped my computer, I wasn't confident that they would arrive in good shape. So before I shipped it, I synced everything I had up to Backblaze. Backblaze is an online cloud service, and I don't remember how much it costs. The advantage that it has is that when if you upload things to Backblaze, it's done automatically. There's just a process that runs on your machine, and it constantly updates. As you create new things, they get updated to Backblaze. It happens in the background, and the price covers whether you have a lot of data or a little data. In my case, I currently have 24 terabytes of information stored on Backblaze. And if I only had, like 50 gigabytes, it would have been the same price. They don't charge you for that. The good news, bad news is it happens in the background. I never noticed that it's happening. It doesn't slow me down at all. But given the kind of internet we have around here, it would probably take a while if you had like a terabyte of data you wanted to upload. It would take a while for it to get uploaded simply because it can't go any faster than your internet connection. But it's invisible to me. It doesn't cost that much money. and it's a good backup service. It's not a replacement for Time Machine. Time Machine backs up a local copy, and if you lose something, it's much easier to pull it off of Time Machine than it is off of Backblaze. It's not difficult off of Backblaze, but among other things, that it requires that you have your machine set up with Backblaze, that you go and search for the stuff, and it's just it's slower and less convenient than Time Machine. Backblaze is I thoroughly endorse the service. I've used it now for what, 7, 8 years, and never had any trouble. If you have a lot of data, they even have a restore by disk service, so that if somebody comes and steals your computer and you have to start from scratch, you buy a new computer and they'll ship you a drive, and then you can copy it off of that drive. You have to ship the drive back, but I've never had to do that. I'm just saying that they think about things like this, because you have terabytes of data. It does take a while to transfer it back and forth.
Thank you.
Backblaze, because of the service that they have, also has they have these drive reliability reports that I use when I'm purchasing storage, because they buy tens of thousands of drives and they're in constant use, and so they can tell you whether or not drives are prone to dying or if they're more robust. I've last several years, anytime I bought a hard drive, I've gone to their site and checked out their stats for it, because they've got some geeks who are quite passionate about doing very strange statistics on hard drives. So it's always entertaining to see what they have to say. Any other questions? Paul, you're muted. Oh, you're not muted anymore.
I just unmuted. Okay, I have a question. I got scammed the other day. I was reading an article on the PDN. I have their app, so you can read the newspaper. And I
They
was
have an
reading
app?
it. What?
They have an app? I didn't
Yeah.
know. Oh,
Yeah, you can if you subscribe to the PDN, you get their app, and you can get articles, and then it actually just looks like the newspaper. You can do whatever either way. But anyway, I was in the newspaper mode, the editions mode, and I was reading the article, and I finished the article, and this window came up with a sort of a flashing, pulsing thing. It was pink or red or something, and it said, "Take our survey." So I thought, oh, okay, this is the PDN. I clicked on that, and it had a little simple survey, and I completed that. Then it said, for taking the survey, you have a chance to win a prize. So, and it was late at night, so I wasn't thinking real clearly. And so I clicked on that, and this little machine came out and drew something out of a box, and there wasn't anything in it. And it said, try again. You have 2 more chances. And I did another one, and it drew up a prize. It was a iPhone 15, I think. Anyway, it said, you won this prize, and you just have to pay $9.50 for shipping and handling. And I thought, that sounds reasonable. And I keep thinking, well, this is a Peninsula Daily News thing, so it should be fairly safe. So anyway, I clicked on that and put in my credit card, knowing that if it was a scam, I'd go ahead and check my credit card and cancel the transaction, which is what happened. I clicked on the thing, and it put up an error message and said, can't complete, there's an error. And so I thought, oh, uh-oh. So I immediately called the credit card, and sure enough, somebody had put a transaction for $130 worth of cosmetics somewhere in Eastern Canada. So they canceled it, and then I canceled my card and had to wait for a week to get a new card. Now, my question is, was that something that was on their website, or is that something that's invaded my phone?
The
Or
answer,
how would we tell?
the answer is it's probably from the Peninsula Daily News site. One of the problems that I'll tell you my own story, kind of as background.
Yeah.
I was on a site. I'm a member. I've been a member since I was 17 of the U.S. Naval Institute, which is a scholarly organization that talks about the Navy and maritime law and so on and so forth. And I was on their website, and this company was selling model of aircraft. And there's one particular aircraft that the Navy used to have called an A5 Vigilante that I think is one of the most beautiful planes ever made. Doesn't make any difference about any of that, but it's just they had this model of this airplane. So I clicked on that, and it went to the model maker's site, and I saw that it was $140, and I lost interest. But it was a beautiful model, but it was also 140 bucks. The next day, when I went onto the Washington Post site, I was kept on getting ads from Lockheed and McDonnell Douglas for fighter planes. Now, I personally I'm just not, I was a civil servant in the United States, and they don't pay us enough for us to buy our own private fighter plane. But that is how the advertising industry works. Google in particular will sell people's search histories to advertisers, plus they use it for their own advertising. And when you go on to the Washington Post sells the advertising space to a vendor to put up ads, but the Washington Post has no idea what they're going to be advertising. They do in the Wild West days that they started off, they had no constraints at all. So, for example, the Washington Post for a couple of weeks was putting up ads for call girls. They didn't realize that they were doing that, but they started putting limitations on what you could have on sites. And so things like Scholastic, which is a publishing company that targets children, they ads have to be things that children can do and not require credit cards and so on and so forth. Whereas for adults, if you go onto the Washington Post, they'll still try and sell you a fighter plane, but no more call girls. So they do put restrictions on it. But the fact is that when Washington Post sells that space, or Peninsula Daily News sells that space, the vendors selling the advertising can put up there whatever they want. There are constraints in terms of the size and how much text it is and so on and so forth. But if somebody wants to establish a shell company and put up fake advertising in order to collect people's credit cards, there's not much that Peninsula Daily News can do about it. But having said that, I would tell Peninsula Daily News, because they essentially are selling that service, and they should know that the service that whoever is running the service probably is doing a bad job. I was surprised recently to find out the Peninsula Daily News is actually owned by a Canadian company.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until recently.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, I did. I let them know. I told them, and person I talked to passed the message on to their tech person. So I assume that at least they have the information that all is not right and
yeah,
on the
but
website.
the simple fact is that probably Peninsula Daily News had nothing to do with this, other than they sold the space.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of how you can protect yourself, I will tell you things that I do to protect myself. I do not ever spend money based upon a text message. So if I get a text message on my phone, like I recently bought some shoes, and the company that I bought the shoes from text messages me, hey, we got sales on this, that, and the other thing. If I decide that I really want those shoes, I will go onto their website from my desktop. I'll
Right.
explicitly go to their website and do a transaction there. I don't do it via text message. And the same is true for things like ads, like this airplane. If I had wanted to spend 140 bucks, I wouldn't have bought it within that box. I would have quit out of the Naval Institute and would have gone to their website and done it that way. In terms of those contests, the contests are actually fairly common. There are vendors that go out there and actually manage contests for publishers, because the publishers of newspapers and so on and so forth like to sell ads, and the more they know about you, the better for selling you ads. And so the other companies have set up operations where they have contests. As an example, I recently bought some hard drives, and at the end of my transaction, they had a survey. And if you fill out the survey, then you can get a prize. And the prize from this company is always a free magazine subscription. And there's for things like House and Garden and Home Beautiful and so on and so forth. There's not a chance that I would ever read any of those, so I ignore that. But I'm aware that they do that, and that is a legitimate thing for them to do. But what they really, this company that's selling you, that's giving away these free subscriptions, what they want is your name, your address, where you live, so on and so forth, so they can sell things to you and make you a better customer. So it's not really free because you're actually giving up some of your privacy. But again, if I wanted a magazine, I'd go to the magazine site and I'd subscribe to it. I don't respond to text messages. I don't respond to sale boxes within an app unless it's for that same company. Like, for example, if it's the Washington Post wanting to sell me a book, okay, I'll go with that. I'll use the Washington Post app for that. But you do have to be wary. And to give you an example specifically for this year, this is an election year. Roughly 2/3 of the messages that are sent out saying, please support our candidate, the candidate doesn't actually get the money. They have an example of a guy who ran for and won in Florida. A guy ran for office and he won a congressional seat. 100% of the money that was collected by this one group in his name went to the guy who was running the money collecting operation. His claim was that the operation cost so much money there wasn't anything left over to give to the candidate. So you want to be really careful about how you give money and who you give money to. Like another thing that people commonly do, I recently had one saying that my Netflix account had expired, and I thought, oh, really? So I looked at the email that it came from, and the visible part of the email said it was some netflix.com. Okay, that's fine. But then it was .gmail. So in other words, they created a domain that went to Gmail saying that my Netflix account had expired. Google doesn't track Netflix accounts. And Netflix would never use Google to get you to resubscribe. So no, it was a scam. But they came up with an email address that looked, if you didn't look too closely, like it might have come from Netflix. You have to be paranoid.
Yeah, I've since received a couple of requests to fill out surveys, and they look legit, but I don't. But no, they can do without my information.
Well, because it is an election year, you're going to see a lot of people want to survey you. Do you believe that toddlers should be allowed to arm themselves to protect themselves in preschool? Yes or no? Okay, I'm not going to answer that survey.
No, there's a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I
Yes.
got one of those Netflix membership is expired and we pay ours automatically every month and it comes out of my bank account.
Well,
So then,
I pay mine with my credit card. So what I do is if I get something like that and it is from Netflix, I do pay attention because it might be a credit card that's going to be expiring before the renewal. So I'll check that way. But that's something I can do in my own home. I don't need to.
yeah,
I
well,
don't need to
this
do
says
anything else.
has expired and
Yes.
the one, my bank hasn't expired.
And also, if that was in danger of happening, Netflix would tell you. They wouldn't tell you
Right.
ex post facto. So be paranoid. It's kind of a shame because computers, when I started using computers were designed for computing. They add, subtracted, multiplied, divided, they can do complex equations, so on and so forth. Now we use computers chiefly as a communications tool. And because we use them chiefly as a communications tool, they can be abused because they're a lot more powerful than the old telephone. My iPhone here, is more powerful than all the computers in the world combined in 1970, just by itself. So this is an incredibly powerful Unix-based computer, and it happens to be in my pocket, and I use it to play games when I'm in a waiting room at the doctor's office. But you know,
Yeah.
it's a pity we have to be paranoid, but we do. And it is 7 o'clock, and I should think about talking to our president. Hello, President.
Hello, Lawrence. How are you?
I'm fine.
Speaking of doctor's offices, how is Kathleen?
And that's a complicated question. She went one sequence of therapy, and we didn't get the result we wanted, or they wanted either. And we're waiting for a bunch of referrals to come up with plan B. So she spends a lot of time snoozing right now.
But she's still at home.
Yes.
Okay.
In
Well,
fact, she's watching the meeting on our TV. I'm using the Apple TV to rebroadcast the Zoom session.
Okay. Hi, Kathleen. We miss you.
I don't know if you could hear her, but she said hi.
Oh, okay. I really don't have anything besides, well, just welcome everybody. And
Your
One
mother's
second.
going to tell us that I haven't sent in the invoices. I know, I'm a bad boy.
and can you put in the sign-in sheet on the
I did put it in there, but I can copy it and paste it again.
okay.
I don't think I know how to do that well.
In the meeting chat window is the link to the sign-in sheet. And I use that for, among other things, telling people that we have meetings. So please fill it out. And it would be immensely useful.
Okay. And now we have the treasury report.
Not a big report, it's small, but we have, thank you to the one member who sent in the dues. So we got $24 more than last month. So we are at $2,442.93.
Until I send in invoice, and then we'll have somewhat less, but
Yeah, there's a little bit less. Yeah, send it in when you have a chance.
anything else before I do the presentation?
Are we gonna have any in-person meetings anytime soon?
The answer to that is with spring and it being warmer and more light outside, the answer is yes. I would like suggestions in terms of what the topic would be. I like in-person meetings because, among other things, I'm assured it reminds me that there are really people out there who aren't small little boxes on my screen. So I like those.
Didn't you
Plus,
already have some ideas that you wanted to do that had to be done in person because of bandwidth?
yes, there's some things that I want to do in person because if we might run into an issue today when I'm talking about artificial intelligence. When there are certain things that I would like to demonstrate that there's a good chance it'll interrupt the Zoom stream. So there are some things that are just a little bit difficult to do unless we do them live. But yes, there are some things I would like to pursue. But in terms of an in-person meeting, yes, it would be nice if we had something in the May, June, July time frame. We can't meet at the library. Kathleen and I are planning tomorrow to go to a groundbreaking ceremony where they break ground for the new library. The library invited us because we're special people. We're going to go to that. And after they get done with the expansion, they're going to have a lot more computer resources. So it'll be curious to see if it's something we can take advantage of. I don't exactly know what they're doing because they talk about it in general terms. I might find out tomorrow.
Lawrence, when you do AI tonight, can you really dumb it down? I don't know how many people need it dumbed down, but I even know, I'll see something and my daughter's like, that's AI. That picture is totally AI. And I'm like, or what's the other one? It's not just AI. It's
Chat GPT.
Chat GPT is considered an AI agent. I'm not going to dumb it down, but I am going to address my particular biases when it comes to AI. I don't know how many of you looked at the movies that I put up, the homework movies. If you haven't, you should take a look at the movies. They're not terribly long. What I use to create those, some people would consider AI, but I don't, and I'll explain why. But anyway, I'm going to share my screen now so I can show off some stuff. And the first thing I want to do is I actually have a slideshow, which I know is not particularly exciting, but such is life. And I'm going to post these so you don't have to sit here and read it. And we're not going to start with that slide. We're going to start with this one. The first thing I want to mention is there are many things you can do with a computer. There are many different kinds of computers. There are many different kinds of programming language, different kinds of programming styles, different kinds of programs. And I mention that because a lot of what we do with people are calling AI is just programming. So I want to talk about what is programming first and then explain the difference. This is the extended ASCII character set. ASCII, American Standard Code for Information Interchange, is the standardized way in which computers store things internally and talk to one another. And as you can tell from the name, it's very North American centric. It was developed during the the standard was created during the 1950s, and pretty much every computer on the planet, even ones that have never had anything to do with English, use ASCII. So when you see things that are written in Chinese characters, the computer itself is still using ASCII internally, and it's using a much more extended character set to show the Chinese characters. I'm going to show you that's the extended character set. It starts off at 32. Where is 32? 32 is a space. So starting from 32 to 255, those are the characters in the ASCII, extended ASCII character set. This is a Fortran program which will print to the screen those characters from 32 to 255. You don't have to understand it at all, just that's what a Fortran program would look like to do that. This is a COBOL program to do the same thing, print out those characters. Here's a PL1 program to do that. PL1's not used anymore, but at one point, IBM said this was going to be the programming language that everybody used. That's why it's called PL1, Programming Language 1. Here is an 8080 assembler language program to print out those same characters. Assembler is kind of like if you wanted to knit and you started off with the sheep and you actually sheared the sheep and carded the wool and made the strands and so on and so forth. That's essentially what 8080 assembler is. You have to talk it directly into computer speech. You can't use some English-like language. Here is a program written in Snowball. You'll notice that this is of all of the ones I'm going to show it, this is the shortest one. Snowball was my favorite language when I was in grad school because it was designed to work with strings. To a computer, anything that's not a number is a string. And because I was working in the humanities, the strings were great. I was looking at this huge trial transcript and I wrote programs in Snowball to do an analysis of it back in the days before people had come up with tools for doing this kind of stuff. Here's a program written in BASIC to print those characters. Here's a program written in Ada. Ada is a language done by the created for the Department of Defense to create very rigid rules for things like weapon systems. Here's a program done in Swift. Swift is the language used to make the Mac operating system, make the apps that you see on the App Store. Almost all of those were written in Swift. Differences between AI and a traditional programming. And again, I'm going to post these slides so you don't have to read them. Human programming relies on explicit sets of instructions. You, the programmer, write a set of instructions. You try to anticipate how people will respond to those, to respond to the program and come to a desired result. And the programs have a specific purpose. So when you write a program, the program does X, does Y, does Z. Microsoft Word, for example, it's a word processor. It's never going to paint the side of your house. It can't trim your lawn. It can't vacuum the floor. All it's going to do is be a word processor. And even for the word processor, it requires a human to actually type. It's not going to do that on its own. And if you have a game of chess, all it's going to do is play chess. In machine language or artificial intelligence, it's done with machine language, you create programs that allow the program to teach itself. So an artificial intelligence program has routines in it that allow it to ingest information and use that to change its own logic. So instead of a person writing a program that does something very specific, the program itself has taught itself how to do things that it may not have been originally designed to do. So that's a big difference between traditional programs and AI. And it's also one reason why I think that a lot of things we call AI aren't really AI, but I'll explain that in a second. Differences between AI and traditional programming. Human programming relies on defined rules. You have a specific purpose. With machine learning, it's designed to be flexible and to evolve over time. The human programs are designed so that somebody can actually read the program and figure out what it's doing. Machine learning models, on the other hand, tend to be very, very opaque. It's very difficult to figure out exactly how it came up with that result. Scalability. With human programming, somebody has to actually do it. Somebody has to be fluent in not only the programming language, but also in communications. Some of the best programmers are actually writers and musicians and not computer scientists. And if you want to have a big project, you need a lot of human programmers. With machine learning, the theory is that just by throwing additional computational resources, you can do more complicated things. And then there's domain knowledge. The classic example is that if you have a very good chess program, it took programming by humans who were very good at chess in order to create that. It's very difficult to have a chess program that's better than the programmers who created it. Whereas with machine learning, because it's sucking in huge amounts of information that technically could be from multiple people, it might be better than anything that a human could do. And where am I? I am here. There's also definitions. Sentient versus sapient. A sentient thing is something that's able to perceive or feel things around it. Your cat, if you rub it between the eyes, is going to like that because it can feel that and it responds to that. If you have a deer that gets lost in your neighborhood, it's going to be frightened and because it's not next to its mother. These are sentient creatures. They are able to perceive things. They are able to feel things. Artificial intelligence isn't at that level yet, and that's the lowest rank where it comes to intelligence. They really cannot perceive themselves and feel things. Sapient is even harder. Sapient things are considered wise. They're capable of problem solving. They're even capable of inventing problems to solve. If you think about it, one of the most popular games ever invented was solitaire, which is a sorting exercise. And why do people do that? People like to play solitaire simply because our minds like to solve problems. So that's something that again, artificial intelligence isn't there yet. Artificial intelligence research requires computer science, requires mathematics, requires cognitive science. Cognitive science has to do with the part about being self-aware and making decisions and how to learn. Requires neuroscience, which is the study of how our brains function and get these insights onto how to program things. But it also requires linguistics, the ability to communicate how communications theory works, philosophy to address moral questions and what is the nature of intelligence and things like that. It requires electrical engineering. Depending upon what you're doing, might require robotics, which is applying intelligence to things that move. Requires an understanding of physics because we're actually bumping up against the limits of physics with a lot of the stuff that we're doing now, and requires the social sciences in terms of to give us insight into how these things are going to affect us culturally. Dangers of artificial intelligence. The big one is job displacement. In the little video I put up, the most common thing that a lot of companies want to do with artificial intelligence, they want to get rid of call centers, they want to get rid of customer service, they want basically to have some machine tell you why you can't get a refund. They're trying to cut costs. And so that's one possible problem with artificial intelligence. Bias in terms of what the machine thinks is right and wrong. A common tool used by a lot of loan companies and insurance companies and so on and so forth does demographic studies of places around the country, and they say that if you own property or you have property in a particular area, you are high risk and have to pay higher premiums. Well, these tend to have economic biases so that if you're in a poor neighborhood, you're a higher risk. Even though you might be perfectly capable, you're going to pay more simply because of the biases in terms of the socioeconomics around you. And in computer intelligence, artificial intelligence, there's no way to overcome that bias because it's strictly data-driven. And if you say that that's a bad area, it'll say, okay, that's a bad area. Privacy concerns. Most of the artificial intelligence platforms that are out there right now, including things like ChatGPT, were built using a database of millions of books that they did not ask the authors for permission. And the books are a mixture of science books and mathematics books and philosophy books, but also novels. And one of the problems they run into is that they also looked at public databases. So this the most commonly used database has a whole bunch of information on individuals up till about 2019. The real problems with privacy there, that should they have been scarfing up this data and should that be used to create the artificial intelligence? You also have problems with things like autonomous weapon systems. If you have an autonomous weapon, means the weapon can go out on its own and fire at somebody on its own. Doesn't need a human to say, that's a target. It goes out and picks its own targets and fires on them. Probably not a terribly good idea. And there's also the fear that a lot of people have that the artificial intelligence may surpass our intelligence, and they might decide that maybe we're a threat. That's a common theme in a lot of science fiction movies. And even though we're not near that point, it's still something we should pay attention to. There are also security vulnerabilities. We have trouble right now securing systems that are designed to be secure. How difficult is it going to be to make something secure that we did not design? That it was designed, that the thing that we made is designed to learn, and it could learn bad stuff. There's also social manipulation. There was a senator from Pennsylvania who did something that one group did not like. So they created a definition of his last name that was a vulgar act. And now if you go search on a lot of search engines, you're going to see that the definition of his name is a vulgar act. How did that happen? Thousands of people started writing that such and such equals such and such. And so Google and Bing and everything learned that the definition of this word was this vulgar act. And that's that kind of bias is very difficult for a computer to understand, because a computer, among other things, doesn't really understand what it is to be a human, doesn't really understand what it is to be a US senator. There are ethical considerations on if these things really are intelligent. Are you allowed to turn them off? Or would that be murder? There are economic problems. Right now, most of the AI systems are owned by people who are have at least hundreds of billions of millions of dollars, if not billions. So they right now control this type of research. And there's also the question of human autonomy. Many of you might remember that when they first came out with electronic calculators, they were afraid that everybody would stop learning how to do basic math. And there is some reason to think that that's something that we might be, something we should pay attention to. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pictures that I created using an AI program called Firefly. Firefly is owned by Adobe, and in order to use it, you have to own some Adobe software and set up an account, so on and so forth. I was fascinated when I saw some of the pictures of the total eclipse of people looking at their phones instead of at the eclipse. And so I said, okay, draw a picture of people looking at their phones during this eclipse. And this is the first one that it came up with. What I did is I typed in the text that said, eclipse of the sun with a crowd looking at their iPhones. And it came up with this. Well, most of the crowd's not looking at their iPhones. Most of them looking at the eclipse. So that wasn't a good one. So I tried it again, and I actually like this one slightly better, but it's still not quite what I had in mind. And this is based just upon a text description. This first one is an actual drawing. I wanted it to be a kind of art novelle, and it did pretty good in terms of the style there. It's kind of art novelle. The second one, I wanted more photorealistic, so it came up with this second drawing. The next thing I wanted to do, I said I wanted a frantic woman IT manager, surrounded by many laptops and many raccoons eating computer cables. So here's this frantic woman. She doesn't look very frantic to me, surrounded by laptops. It's got that. Surrounded by raccoons, but the raccoons are not eating the cables. And that wasn't what I wanted. This, by the way, is my joke that I tell people who are on the East Coast where they have high-speed internet. I say around here, the computer signals are actually taken back and forth by raccoons. So it's part of my joke about the raccoons. So I tried again and I got this one. She looks kind of harried and there are raccoons, but she's eating the cables and not the raccoon. So it still didn't quite get what I wanted. But this is just a text prompt. What I typed into Firefly was frantic woman IT manager surrounded by many laptops and many raccoons eating computer cables. That's what I typed in to Firefly in order to get this photograph. This one worked out a little bit better. I typed in giant blue dragon looking at tiny bug, and that's a giant blue dragon looking at a tiny bug. And there's another bug-like creature over here trying to run away. And I asked for a kind of a second one that's basically the same thing, but this one's kind of a close-up of the giant dragon and the bug. So that's pretty good. For other reasons that I'm not going to explain, scones are Scottish and the Scots like tea. And I decided to combine the two, and I said I wanted a Japanese samurai princess in armor having a cup of tea and a scone. So here's the scone, here's the tea, and that's sort of a Japanese princess, and it's done in this Japanese wood block print style. So that one's not too bad. There was an issue with a new painting that was thought to be by Leonardo da Vinci, and there was big to-do about it, and somebody asked for my thoughts on the subject. And I decided what I wanted to send them was a picture of the Mona Lisa painting Leonardo da Vinci instead of Leonardo da Vinci painting Mona Lisa. So I told Firefly, Mona Lisa as a painter creating a painting of Leonardo da Vinci. And that's what it came up with. Not quite sure, understanding the mountains because there aren't mountains around there. And I tried it again. Mona Lisa as a painter creating a painting of Leonardo da Vinci. This one I kind of like because it's not a bad painting. You can't see what she's doing. This one, it got a little bit too creative. It made Mona Lisa look sort of like a Madonna, which is not quite what Mona Lisa was supposed to be looking like. And I tried once more, and this one's not bad at all because at least there's a picture of a man here. And in this one, it shows that Mona Lisa's not necessarily a great painter, but it's getting to what I wanted, which was Mona Lisa painting Leonardo da Vinci. And another try gave me this one, which is a lovely, lovely painting, but it doesn't really seem to have anything to do with Leonardo da Vinci, but it is a nice painting. My granddaughter lives in England and she was drawing a map. She said it was a map. And so I thought, okay, I want a child drawing a map of London, and it gave me this. And here's a child, and I guess that's sort of like London. And there's a cup of coffee, which is kind of weird because really probably not this child's favorite drink, but that's not bad. And then we were talking, my background is Japanese history, which means that it's also Asian history. And somebody was talking about, they wanted a good Chinese restaurant that had fortune cookies. And I said, fortune cookies are not Chinese. And he said, what are they? And my response was, well, they were actually invented in San Francisco by a Japanese man. But he wanted to know, what's my source? So I said here, the ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius contemplating a fortune cookie. Well, fortune cookies were actually developed in the 20th century in San Francisco. Confucius knew nothing about it. And this guy looks a little bit too contemporary to be Confucius. And I'm not quite sure why a Chinese philosopher would be in front of Mount Fuji. Then I said, I had been reading the story in the Japan Times. Japan has only one time zone. The entire country is one time zone. So it's really cool because you can be all over the country and you listen to the same TV programs and the same radio programs, and you never have to reset your clock. It's great. But there was an argument about maybe they should have a time zone for Hokkaido, which is the farthest to the east and the farthest north. It should be different from Okinawa, which is like 1,800 miles away. So I said I wanted two Japanese politicians arguing about daylight savings time outside of Japan's Imperial Palace, and it gave me this. That doesn't look like Japan's Imperial Palace, but it's got a kind of a Japanese feel to it, so that's not too bad. And then I just said that I wanted to have a photograph type, and so it gives me a more photorealistic one. These two guys are kind of weird. And there is a Japanese flag and there is a palace, but that particular palace is actually in Osaka. But, you know, okay, it was trying. And then I said I wanted a warrior princess in armor having a cup of tea and a scone. So this is a different warrior princess. She's not a Japanese princess. She's just a warrior princess having a cup of tea and a scone. That's not bad. And this is another warrior princess having a cup of tea and a scone. That's not bad. We were talking about ferries. I was talking about ferries with somebody on the East Coast, and I said, well, we have ferries here in Washington State. And they say, oh, but ferries are kind of boring. Nothing ever happens. And, oh, so no, I said, we also have water dragons. And they said, what's a water dragon? So I sent them this picture, which is a Washington State ferry boat being chased by a water dragon. Okay. Can't really argue with that. And here I said that a woman is fighting evil spirits pouring out of a computer. It looks to me more like electrical sparks than an evil spirit, but it's not bad. I can tell by the keyboard this is more like a Dell than a Mac, but you know, details. And finally, I wanted a woodblock print of London as painted by Hokusai. I'm kind of obsessed with Hokusai. This is kind of a good Hokusai wood block print. It sort of looks like London, except that there are no volcanoes in London, unless they've added one that I'm unaware of. But this is an example of what they call what is being promoted as AI. And it's being promoted as AI because it uses machine learning to learn how art is created. And then it knows how to mimic various styles. And I can't really show it to you because if I did, it would definitely kill the Zoom connection. But I type in a text string and then I can specify, do I want it black and white or color? Do I want it photorealistic? Do I want it to be a particular style? Like this is a woodblock painting style, but it also has watercolor and oil painting, different kinds of styles. Is this really AI? I would say that this is machine learning because it's learned a lot about art, but it's not really artificial intelligence because it's designed to do a specific thing. It's designed to take a descriptive string of text and create an image from that. It's not really, you might call it an expert system. We created a system that has a pretty good knowledge of art, except that sometimes it does really weird things. Like if you look at these two guys, they're physically distorted. And if we come to one I had earlier of the eclipse, this woman's nose in particular is it's got issues. So it's not perfect, but as an expert system to create artwork for people who really aren't artists, it's not a bad setup. Will it put graphic artists out of business? No. This is it's not going to put a graphic artist out of business. It's not going to put a photographer out of business, but it is a good demonstration of what they are calling AI. But I would call this an expert system rather than AI. It's not sentient, and it's not there. I want to show you another example. And this shouldn't be too difficult for me to deal with. Somebody give me a subject. Any old subject, can be a person's name or color or autumn or something.
Milton's Paradise Lost.
I'm Milton's Paradise. Okay. Write a news story about the election in the style of Milton's Paradise Lost. That was my prompt. And what it's doing, it's writing this much longer poem than I was expecting. And let's see if I can blow it up. In Eden's realm where mortals aspire and righteous fervor fans the fervent fire, a tale unfolds of ballast cast on high where angels and demons vie neath azure sky in the hollowed halls where scepters convene, et cetera, and so forth. So, yes, this is Chat GPT. Is that artificial intelligence? I will tell you something.
If it isn't, what is it?
It's better at writing blank verse than I am. I will give it credit for that. But this is really not artificial intelligence. This is a tool that's designed to parse language and feed it back to you. An example of the misuses of ChatGPT, a certain famous lawyer, until he got debarred, submitted a brief in one of the lawsuits against him, and he did it in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT made up legal precedents and cited them, and he turned it in, not knowing that they were made up, so they were completely imaginary. The problem with the good news is that ChatGPT can do this, which I think is impressive. The bad thing is that ChatGPT does not know the difference between reality and fiction. And so, among other things, it read a whole bunch of Perry Mason novels and a whole bunch of other things without the permission of the authors, ingested just millions of books, including novels. And in these novels, they talk about cases. So ChatGPT, when it's sitting there and thinks, okay, how does a legal brief work? It knows the style of a legal brief, and it has precedents, but it doesn't know that a precedent case that Perry Mason is citing is make-believe. So this politician, who's also a lawyer, one of his appeals was he submitted a brief that was done by ChatGPT. Trademark case done in New Jersey. Somebody used ChatGPT for his legal brief, and it got thrown out because, again, it was made up. ChatGPT is an interesting toy, but it doesn't really know the difference between what's real and what's fake. There is I mentioned it in the little clip that I had. There is a novel out, and I think the title is Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. And it's a novel because Lincoln did not go out and slay vampires. But the supposition of I haven't read the novel, but the supposition of the novel is that the Confederates were using vampires to try and overtake the Union during the Civil War. And so Abe Lincoln turned out to be a really good vampire hunter, and that's the plot of the novel. That is not real, but if you fed that to ChatGPT, it would give it the same weight as the Kearns biography of Abraham Lincoln, because as far as ChatGPT knows, it says this is about Lincoln and Lincoln did that, so that's true. it doesn't have the ability to tell the difference between fact and fiction. But in terms of just a, a short little thing done in the style of Paradise Lost, talking about modern news, that's not bad.
Well, it's not blank verse.
Well, I don't exactly know what to call it, but it's done in the style of Paradise Lost. So,
It's rhyming couplets. That's more like Pope.
okay, I'll go with that. Anyway, anything, give me another prompt that I can try out. One of the nice things about Chat GPT is because it's all text-based, doesn't use up that much bandwidth. So I can sit here and play with it. Nothing? Okay, well, I'm going to ask it something. Make me a recipe for very chocolate chip cookies. That's my prompt.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, now this actually looks like a fairly decent 1 cup, 2 sticks unsalted butter, softened, 1 cup granulated sugar, 1 cup, 1 packet brown sugar, 2 large eggs, 2 teaspoons pure vanilla extract, 2 cups all-purpose flour, 1 cup unsweetened cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 2 cups semi-sweet chocolate chips, additional semi-sweet chocolate chips for topping optional. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Now this will cause us grief right here. I tried making, I'm not a cook. I tried making something in our oven, set it to 350 and it didn't work at all. And then Kathleen told me that our stove is seriously out of calibration and it needs to be 75 degrees warmer in order to work. So, oh well, this would not have worked for me, but it looks to my eye as a pretty good chocolate chip cookie recipe. And unlike Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, this doesn't seem to have any fictional elements.
Hmm.
Anybody else have an idea for that I can try?
What is the best way to get rid of moles in my yard?
Eh. What is the best way to get rid of moles in my yard? It says, starts off, I have to show this to you. Because the opening sentence cracks me up.
Yeah.
Ah, the elusive moles, those subterranean wanderers whose presence can wreak havoc upon the verdant tapestry of your yard. Fear not, for there are strategies to bid farewell to these burrowing bandits. I think it's still stuck on Milton, but
Yeah.
physical barriers, repellents, traps, flooding, natural predators, grub control, maintain a tidy yard, professional assistance. I will tell you something that I am fond of. Moles don't like vibrations. And if you get these, you can go to almost any garden shop around here and get these metal pinwheels that the wind blows, stick those, and moles don't like those at all. I first noticed this when I was a child. We had first several years of my life were on a farm that, among other things, did not have indoor plumbing, and had dirt floors inside. We had a windmill, and there were no moles within 150, 200 feet of the windmill because it was constantly creating vibrations. Well, this is a full-size windmill that also pumped water, but it just these pinwheels, metal pinwheels that you can buy. We have wind constantly around here, and the vibrations, the moles don't like it. So it may not help your entire yard, but it might at least discourage them. And it doesn't put any poisons around or anything like that. So I recommend pinwheels.
Lawrence,
Yes.
when you're typing this in, how is this different than just asking Google a question?
if you ask Google a question, it'll send you to a page that has things like that. But for example, I could ask for this, my chocolate chip cookie recipe, if I ask for it in Latin, let's see if it'll do that. Right? Told it to write a chocolate chip cookie recipe in Latin. And I have no idea what it says, so I'm going to go with the fact that it must be in Latin. I'll ask my resident Latin expert. Kathleen, is this Latin?
Looks like it.
Not really. She's somewhat skeptical, although it did translate Fahrenheit into centigrade, so you know that's a step in the right direction. It's different from Google in as much as it tries to solve problems, and it will create things that did not exist. For example, my poem about the political process, that didn't exist. I asked it to create something, and it created that. It's a different process than going and finding it. I actually posted on the Strait Mac site a troubleshooting process that it came up with, that it wrote as if it was a medieval scribe. It just told you how to troubleshoot your Windows machine. And ChatGPT did that because I did not try to go look for one thing like that. But what ChatGPT does is it can create things, but it's strictly a text-based engine. You give it a task, and if it does, it'll go out there and create it. A couple things that it is limited by is the database that it uses for the language, those 3 million books and such that it's based upon. It kind of ends around 2018, 2019. So it's not aware of anything that happened since then. Originally, it would do things like come up with slanders of current politicians and so on and so forth. So, and they've stopped doing that. So if you try and same thing with Adobe's Firefly, if you ask it to have draw a photograph of Donald Trump riding a unicorn, it'll say it'll say it can't do that. If you say, I want a picture of a clown riding a unicorn, it would do that. But if you try and give a politician's name or some current person, it say it can't do that. Those rules didn't exist when they first came out. And you probably read in the paper about people using different AI projects to put teenage girls' faces on the porn actresses' bodies, and the controls aren't not too many of these search engines have developed controls to prevent abuse yet. That's one of the dangers of these tools. But none of these right now are really artificial intelligence. They're machine-assisted tools, and they can create things that did not exist before, such as those images that I was showing you earlier. But it's not really intelligence. Things to be aware of. A lot of companies are trying to work on putting artificial intelligence into things like chatbots. So you have a blender and the blender's not working, and you go to West Bend or whoever made it, and you try and get them to, fix your blender, and you end up in this conversation with something. You think you're talking with a human being, and it's actually a chat bot. And the chat bot is probably programmed in such a way that it's going to reject anything that you want that costs the company money. You should be aware that things like this are actually happening. And it's the uses that people put this technology to is not necessarily good. But as a tool for writing chocolate chip cookie recipes in Latin, it's great. I don't know if it can do that in Greek.
Mhm.
Yes, it's writing something I assume is in Greek because I can't read any of it.
If you asked it to show you the correct HTML and cascading style sheet language to frame a picture or photograph with a drop shadow and a border, would it do that?
Um, well, let me finish. Okay, I think it's done with the Greek here. I'll try something simpler. Okay, I told it to write a basic language program to calculate the first 50 prime numbers. Why am I doing this? It's because why not? It gives it something specific to do. And that actually would work. It just wrote a program to calculate the first 50 prime numbers. I'm familiar enough with basics that I know that that would work. So yes, it can do things like that. This is one reason why people are afraid that people are going to use AI to replace programmers. One of the problems that you have is that people are really good at finding edge cases, which as an example is an edge case is people using AI to generate porn. That's an edge case. The computers don't know that those are edge cases. So if somebody comes up with a way to phrase that, the computer will probably do it. Whereas a human being could, it's called trapping, error trapping. You put in conditions that it must meet in order before it does something. And when you're a programmer, you do that all the time. I'll give you an example. When you type in a search query and you press enter, Google looks it up, and if it finds a page that matches that, Google sends your browser to that page, but on the receiving end, the server also gets to log what the search query was. Well, when I was working for NOAA, a very common question I would get, the website would get was, I worked for National Ocean Service, so it was questions about the ocean. How much sperm does a sperm whale hold? And if I looked at these queries, which we got a lot of, you could tell that they were coming from junior high and high school kids and people probably drunk in bars and so on and so forth. So I created a query string that looked for sperm, whale, and did not contain the word weight. Because if somebody wanted to know how much a sperm whale weighed, I'd have an answer for that. But if they ask how much sperm was in a sperm whale, I sent them to a page that said, and this is almost a direct quote, as much as you will find in the average American high school. Now that actually says nothing at all because most people don't know what an average American high school is. It's implied that maybe I'm talking about the kids in high school, but it doesn't actually say anything. And I did that to stop people from asking questions like this. It would just give them that page all the time. And that's a way in which I could error trap for people trying to do things that I really didn't want them to do. An AI program has no such constraints. You tell it to solve a problem, it will take what it knows and combine it to solve a problem. Many of you have probably seen YouTube videos of cats riding around on a Roomba. And there are also, you can get little robots now. A Roomba vacuums up your floor, but there are also robots that trim hedges. Well, if you told an AI program, make the cat stop meowing, the robot might think, the program might think, okay, I'm going to get the cat on top
Oh,
of the Roomba,
dear.
going to go outside, and then I'm going to use the hedge trimmer to silence the cat. To the AI program, it has solved the problem. To you, that's pretty horrific, but it took 2 data sets on how to solve problems, mashed them together, and came up with an unacceptable solution. Humans can guard against this in the way we program. We don't know that AI has that ability. I probably didn't answer your question, but you can get it to write programs. I told it to write a CSS segment for displaying a picture with a drop shadow, and it gave me a block of code, which looks like it would actually work. And it lists down below it the explanation of how the code works. So yes, it will do. It's pretty good at writing code. Sometimes the code I've noticed is very generic, and it doesn't make any mistakes. I can criticize the code, but I'm a human, so that's my prerogative. Anything else you want to try and torment it with?
Lawrence,
Yes.
I see Carol and Marcia each have their hand up, and
Oh,
I'm unable to find anything that will let me put my hand up today. But it looks like they have questions, but they're both muted.
Yes. Marcia, you're on mute. Do you have a question? Marcia, do you have a question? Anybody else have a question?
I have a
No.
story.
Yes. Chris, go
I have a
ahead.
story. Well, I'm very interested to hear the term job displacement and also expert systems, because in 1985, I and 4 other librarians gathered to form the Artificial Intelligence / Expert Systems Interest Group of what was then the Information Technology Division of the American Library Association. And artificial intelligence didn't really figure too much. It was the expert systems that had lots of librarians scared they were going to be put out of jobs. So 3 years in a row, we filled a hotel ballroom, the first one in Chicago, I think it was in 1986, at the annual convention. We had standing room only. There were well over 300 people to hear a panel, and we called it Deus Ex Machina. And then being struck with total imagination paralysis, the second year we called it Deus Ex Machina Roman numeral 2, and then the third year Roman numeral 3. And after that, we either ran out of people who were willing to be on a 5-person panel talking about expert systems and AI, or interest dropped off, or the bureaucracy of the institution decided we'd had our run, or we ran out of people to form the interest group. In any case, that was 1985, and that's almost 40 years ago.
Yes, the I happen to be interested in this because I put myself through grad school working for Washington State University Library, and I was one of the programmers for the Washington State Library Network, which was the first statewide library network in
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah.
And what I did was the catalog, well, I worked on the cataloging part. And one of the things that that you have problems with expert systems or with artificial intelligence is humans and how we see things. For example, there are rules for how you catalog things. The most famous of which are the ones we developed in the United States called the Anglo-American cataloging rules. And they still exist and they're still in use, but pretty much everybody else copied them. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I was in the National Library of Finland, 5 or 6 years ago, and they use the Library of Congress classification system in their national library. But one of the things that you do is that in order to sort things properly in different languages, you have to have special rules. For example, under the Anglo-American cataloging rules, any Scottish name that ends in MC or MAC is alphabetized as if it's spelled MAC in full. So you'll have McDonald and macaroon will be listed together, whether it's spelled with MC or MAC. That's something that you have to teach the computer that we do things this way, because otherwise all the MCs are going to be separated quite a ways from the ones that are MAC. So that's one.
But that's a sorting function.
That's a sorting function, but it's also something where a human has to intervene and tell the machine that just because the machine can do it one way, that's not the way we want it. I had a fellow Asian historian, his last name was Tenbrook, and I can't remember what the nationality is, but Tenbrook is spelled Tenbrook. So Brook seems fine, but in the front, there's 10, and 10 is in lowercase, so Tenbrook. That doesn't follow the way that computers do things. When they have names, they want to capitalize it. And the computers would capitalize the T in Tenbrook, and it really irritated him. So I had to create a special rule for whatever, I don't remember what nationality uses that prefix. And we do the same thing for Van and Vaughn and so on and so forth. These are all things that require human intervention to do them correctly. And AI systems have real trouble doing things like this because to the AI system, that American Standard Code for Information Exchange, a lowercase a is sorted after an uppercase a all the time. Doesn't make any exceptions. So to teach it to sort it the way we want takes human intervention. And if you tell it to just go and sort books, you're going to not necessarily have what you want. You can do that just with Apple books. In Apple's books, it really irritates me that sometimes Isaac Asimov is under I instead of under A. And I have no real control over it because whoever made the book, that's the metadata they used, and so that's where it sorts it. There are some real fears that there will be job displacement with artificial intelligence, but it's also going to create a whole new category of people who will set about fixing AI systems to do what we really want them to do rather than what they want to do on their own. Kathleen was talking about what about the use of AI for slander? This is something that we've actually seen some examples of this year where people are they want to say something nasty about somebody else and they can't think of anything on their own. So they pose a hypothetical to one of these expert systems that comes back with suggestions on things that can be done. And I don't really consider that a problem in and of itself because it's still slander by a human being. What I do worry about, though, is that you end up doing things like that senator from Pennsylvania, where associating his name with a vulgarity becomes the norm. So when you search for his name, that's one of the things you'll find is the vulgarity. And that is definitely a problem. Any other questions?
What if you ask ChatGPT something like this? What did Jesus mean in the Bible when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life?
I'm not sure my pastor will go along with this.
No, it's life,
Um,
light, not Life.
I'm sorry.
It should be Life, not light.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That doesn't matter.
Paul, you had a question?
Yeah. You gave us some homework to do.
Yes.
And I dutifully watched it. And I noticed in your the Japanese zodiac clip, you had 12 little critters. Now, did you create that from AI or one of your apps, or because I was wondering what was the purpose of the exercise, because I noticed that two of the creatures weren't quite what they said they were.
Yes. Well, actually, three of them were.
Pardon?
Three of them weren't. The unicorn is not really a horse.
Right.
The dinosaur is not really a snake, and a koala bear is not really a sheep. But
Right. Well, I didn't catch the snake one. Yeah.
That originally started as I was having a discussion with someone about he was born in the year of the snake, and he wanted a snake memoji so that when you talk to me, I'd be talking to snake. He's Japanese and he was born in the year of the snake. Kathleen, are you? Yeah, Kathleen was born in the year of the snake as well. I was born in the year of the dragon, and our daughter was born in the year of the ox. But anyway, memoji were created, emoji were originally created by a Japanese artist, and they started using them on telephones for instant messaging in Japan. And gradually they became this huge thing, so that now I think the iPhone can create something like 300 different emojis with different skin tones, and it's got all the flags of all the countries in the world and all kinds of stuff. But memoji, which are these animated ones, I created on my phone. And what I did is I went into my phone and I said to send myself a message. And then I selected the option for a memoji, and I picked those various animals, and then I spoke them. And I did this, I made that video originally for my friend who was complaining about the fact that there was no snake. But it was also an example that I wanted to show you, because I wanted to ask you the question, did I do that with artificial intelligence? How many of you actually looked at the video? Did I do it with artificial intelligence is the question.
No.
No.
Why not?
It was probably canned. I mean,
Well, the memoji, let's go here, Lawrence Charters. I'm going to send myself something. I'm going to pick emoji, and I'm going to pick this one. Okay. This is Lawrence talking as if he's a tiger. This is Lawrence talking as if he's a tiger. Okay, now I'm going to hold this up to my to the camera, and there is me and the tiger memoji. And if I click, well, trust my word, if I click on it, it will. This is Lawrence talking as if he's a tiger. I did that with my iPhone. This is Lawrence all right. Talking as if he's a tiger. Stop talking, Lawrence. I did that just on my phone. I wrote out a script because I wanted to know what I was going to say, because among other things, I sometimes would get ahead of myself and say a word that I wasn't intending to, but wrote out a script, picked out the emojis that I wanted for the zodiac, and then had them say their name, say what they were in Japanese. Is that artificial intelligence? I'd say no, because Apple designed it to do that. Maybe not exactly what I was doing, but Apple designed the iPhone to do that. However, it takes a huge amount of machine learning to do this. The iPhone has a whole bunch of it's called neural processing units, which are specialized CPUs that are used to, I gotta turn off sharing so I can actually see you. It has a whole bunch of neural processors on the iPhone that are designed to deal with things that are not, that you can't add, subtract, multiply, or divide, such as pictures. And when you log into your phone, if you have a phone that's got facial recognition, there's this bar up at the top that you can't really see because I've got a dark background, but there's a bar up at the top that's a black bar that has thousands of little infrared emitters in there that when you use facial recognition, it bounces infrared light off your face, and it can tell, for example, my nose is closer to the phone than my cheekbones are, and it can make a 3D map of your face. And when you do facial recognition, you have to move the phone around and move your head around so that it can get a picture of your phone. And it concentrates particularly on the eyes. That's why they came up with a special feature. If you have facial recognition, you can put a mask on it and the facial recognition still works because it concentrates particularly the area around the eyes. Apple designed that for Face ID. Some programmers at Apple were playing around with it, and they say, hey, if we texture mapped, a clown face on it, we could talk as if we're a clown. And instead of having a clown, which it can scare people, they used animals, and they used cute little cartoon animals. They didn't use scary little animals, and you can make emoji. And so that's what I used for the 2 videos that I did. Is it artificial intelligence? No. Does it use machine learning? Absolutely. Lots and lots and lots of machine learning. The neural processing units on this iPhone can process billions of things a second. Not millions or thousands, but billions of things a second. And when it's dealing with something that you cannot add, subtract, multiply, or divide, which is a picture or a song or things like that, it does pattern matching to match the shape of my face to put that tiger face over the top so it knows where my lips are and makes my lips move. And if I blink, the eyes blink. And depending upon what I do, sometimes you can even make the little ears flicker with some of the memoji. All of that's done with a staggering amount of machine learning that people think is artificial intelligence, but it's not really. It's not the machine picking out a problem and figuring a way to solve it. It's the machine doing what it was designed to do, but in a general way. The general thing was facial recognition. The more specific thing that I was doing, I was using it to be basically a puppet. And I was using a staggering amount of technology to do that.
Lawrence,
Yes.
someone said that that it's possible to use AI in writing a resume.
Yes.
If I was to do that, how do I go about doing it, or what program, yeah, I'm lost.
The easy thing to do, and you could just do this on Google, you could go into Google and say, give me a form for writing a resume, and it'll give you a form. But with ChatGPT, you would say something like, I have 6 years experience at underwater demolitions, and I know how to cook pasta, and I've climbed Mount Everest, and I have a cat named Fred. Please write a resume to be a bellhop at this hotel using this as my experience. It'll come up with a resume. Probably a pretty terrible resume, but at least you'll see the outline of what that kind of resume would be, what order it puts things in, how it emphasizes things. That's the true value that ChatGPT can have. If you've never done a resume, it'll give you a nice form to follow, and you change the content to fit you. And that's the people who've done useful things with ChatGPT. that's the starting point where they are trying to do something different and they want to know what the proper form for that is. I know somebody who made a will that way. Give me the outline of a will that's valid in the state of Washington, and they gave them the outline of a will. And so you just go
So-
through and change the specifics.
In a resume, the way I've seen it years ago, so it's been over 20 years since I've ever written a resume. How do you add all that fluff? People make them so fluffy and they're so full. I hate to say it, it's so full of words that doesn't necessarily, like, just not the nitty gritties.
You will see that a lot of people right now, they use professional programs to sit and evaluate resumes. And the professional programs are basically these expert systems, that one that Chris was saying that would replace librarians, that there's no chance of that happening. But these resumes look for things that can be just classified as skills. So for example, if you know how to type, if you know how to speak Spanish, if you know how to do whatever, you list those skills. And these programs, if they're looking for somebody who can speak Spanish, knows how to use a telephone, and can type 50 words a minute, if that meets their criteria, you'll pop out. But they're looking for skills more than fluff. You say, I'm really interested in making the world better and bringing peace to mankind. That sentence does not mention any kind of skill, does not say anything about any qualifications. That's an aspiration, but it's not a qualification. So you want to emphasize skills. And ChatGPT can't write a resume for you, but it can show you the format for a resume and the order in which you put things. And that's actually fairly standardized. I've written a lot of curriculum vitas. I haven't really written that many resumes. But again, the resumes were focused upon skills, and I knew I was going to get the job anyway. They just wanted a resume for their file. So, but focus on skills and abilities, and not aspirations, and they really could care less about your pet frog and things like that. They do kind of like to humanize things. If you like horseback riding, that's worth mentioning. Or you are an amateur astronomer, that's the kind of thing that humanizes things and sometimes sets you apart from somebody else. But they're really looking for skills. And today, larger companies, about 80 to 90% of them use resume programs. They just feed them the resumes in electronically, and it spits out a list of things that well, take a look at these and ignore the rest. I hate to say it, but that's the way it is.
Thank you.
Other questions? Did everyone sign in?
Oh, no. How do we do that?
Okay.
So
I shall paste the link into the chat again.
oh,
So if you could sign in, that'd be nice. And two things. One is think about what you would like to have in an in-person session. I have ideas of my own. And the second thing is, what do you want to do next month?
okay, while everybody's thinking of those questions, I'm interested in the photography book that you talked about in the earlier email. So how do I go about getting one?
The Take Control photography book with
Yeah.
iPhone photography. If you just go to that link, you'll go to a website and you pay the money, and it downloads it to your computer. You double click on it and it opens up in iBooks. And once it's in your iBooks library, you can look at it on your phone as well as on your desktop machine or tablet, or however you want to look at it.
So, and payment is some sort of a credit card.
Credit card, yes.
And I got an Apple credit card. Thank you very much for suggesting that.
I'm very fond of my Apple credit card. If you give somebody an Apple credit card, it has your name on it. There's no number, There's nothing else on the cards, so there's nothing that anyone can steal. It does them no good at all. But it's and also they're made out of titanium, so you can use it as a very small bulletproof vest. Suggestions for next month?
Are we meeting in person or Zooming?
Kathleen and I have to do a few things that might interrupt our schedule, so I'm kind of hesitant to do an in-person one until we have a very specific plan. So that probably is not going to be something we do in May, but might be something we do in June. So next month we're probably going to be via Zoom.
Okay.
You mentioned before showing us about how to create a web page. Maybe you could explain the advantages of doing that yourself from scratch versus contracting with software like WordPress.
Well, WordPress is how our site is set up. WordPress is the software that I use to do it. If you wanted a WordPress site, you either make one yourself or you contract somebody to use WordPress to make it for you. But I've probably made, at this point, I probably made 700-800 websites. And over the past, 6-8 years, I probably made 50 of those in WordPress. The ones I made before were done by hand, where I actually wrote the code. And I made lots and lots and lots of those because I was being paid to do that. But now that I'm not being paid to do that, I tend to use WordPress.
So is WordPress, does it have like templates and you just, with lorem ipsum text that you replace and so on, or?
Yeah, well, WordPress calls them themes, but yes, they have themes for a bookshop, themes for a photography studio, themes for all kinds of things. And there are free themes and there are paid themes. What I would do if I did a presentation, I just start from scratch, go into WordPress, pick a theme and start showing you how you add stuff to it. It's not really that difficult. Most people with a website, the problem the average website in the world, has one page, just one page. And that's because some restaurant says they want a website with their menu. So they contract with somebody for 150, 200 bucks, and they create a one-page site that's got their menu and that's it. Or the same thing for barbershops and so on and so forth. So they can be very, very simple. Or they can be, I have websites of my own that have thousands of pages that are just mine. So it depends upon whether or not you're willing to actually put the content up there. So part of it is a writing process and part of it is a technical process. But with WordPress, the technical barriers are much less than with almost any other way to do it.
Okay.
I think that would be interesting.
Okay, well,
Just Steve and I.
that is something that I am more than willing to do because I have lots of experience at that. And probably along the way, I could also tell you how not to build a website. I have seen some just horrific websites. Kathleen, who's has 5 degrees and is members of various professional organizations, she was asked to register for this one conference last year before. Every time she would put her information in there, when she print submit, nothing would happen. And that's because when they built the website, they had this submission process for submitting your curriculum vitae and all that sort of stuff, but they didn't have a database behind it, so the button for submit didn't work. It couldn't do anything with that data. And she got very frustrated and had me come and play with it, and we broke out our Windows machine to make sure that it wasn't just discriminating against Macs. And no, they hadn't actually tested it. So it didn't work.
So would this be for in person?
No, this is something we can do remotely.
But that right there is the kind of thing that people can run into, which it would be helpful for you to cover. For example, I ordered some iris from a place called Shriner's Iris Garden in Oregon, one of the famous iris growers in the United States. Very good place to buy stuff. Anyway, I used my iPad and they wanted me to set up an account. So I did that using the hide my email business. But then there was no log out button. He says, well, there is on my screen. I said, well. So I wound up going to my desktop computer, my Mac, and looking, and sure enough, there it showed me a logout button, but on the iPad it didn't. So this is somebody hadn't tested something.
Well, I had a manager who wanted people to, he thought the only people would use their website were people in his own organization. And he wanted to be logged in all day, so he didn't want them to be able to log out. So I created a logout button anyway. And when you went to try and push it, it would move it.
Oh, you stole that idea from early Macintosh. Remember the bomb?
Yes.
Bomb. You try to, that's exactly what it would do. It'd run away.
Yeah, so he couldn't log out because the button would run away. But he didn't realize that you could just quit the browser and that would also log you out. But, you know, details. He wasn't. I asked that he be replaced as the head of this project because he was impossible to deal with. But be that as it may, I'll show you how to build a website next month. How's that?
That's great.
Okay. Have fun. See you next month.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.